What's up, crew? Welcome to Filming in Progress, the show that takes you backstage into the world of local businesses and the people who make them shine. We're thrilled to welcome Jaime Holland, co-founder of Holland Design, a firm dedicated to transforming workplaces with empathy and precision. Jaime's entrepreneurial spirit drives her mission to make design an empowering and inclusive experience. Jaime, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show. I'm really excited.
Likewise. Where are we?
We are currently at our office here in the 403rd Tower in Calgary.
Awesome. How did you first get into the interior design space?
Oh, it sounds really cliche, but as a young child, I just always loved to build things. I recognized that in myself from a really young age. So for me, that transpired through, building with boxes or whatever I could find. I made my own doll houses or, forts. Any sort of constructive play was really a big part of my childhood. So for me, I always knew I wanted to create things, but I always thought it was architecture. I didn't actually know what interior design was or could be. So I was on the path to go into architecture, but Jocelyn, who is my older sister, actually went into the Mount Royal Interior Design program. And because she was living at home at the time, I was observing her work and what she was doing. And then I realized that interior design was what I perceived architecture to be. And even more so, I think I related to it because it's at such a human scale. And that really was what interested me about design. So from there, I followed in Jocelyn's footsteps, I guess, and entered the program at Mount Royal shortly after.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Did you work at any firm before starting your own with Jocelyn?
Yes, I did. While I was in school at Mount Royal, I had the opportunity to work in the UK for my second internship. So I went over to Cardiff in Wales and worked for a small architecture firm there. That was in 2008-9-ish when the UK was having a little bit harder of a time. And Calgary was still in this bubble with lots of towers still under construction. So I decided to move home in 2009, and I worked at Gibbs Gage Architecture for a period of time before starting with Jocelyn in 2011.
Amazing. Did you know that you wanted to start your own firm at some point, or was it did it come out of necessity?
I wish I could say I had this plan and it just sort of fell into place through a very calculated approach. But I think I just always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I would say I'm inherently a risk taker. So at the time, I had the opportunity to work closely with Jocelyn, and we were in good company, and we realized we worked really well together. And that was more of a coincidence than anything initially. And then I often say I was sort of young and dumb enough to think I knew everything, and we started our business quite young. But fortunately, I think things really worked out for us, and we were able to navigate the ups and downs of the last almost 13 years in a way that has served us well. I'm really happy now to have taken that path, definitely.
I'm always curious as to the sibling dynamic in business. It's not common. So how did that come about? Did you always work well together, even as kids and that sort of thing? And then also, can you speak to kind of your complementing skill sets?
Yeah, definitely. I laugh when actually people ask that question to Jocelyn and I together, because we have quite different answers about how we perceived our childhood. I thought we got along great. I'm the younger sister by 3 years, but Jocelyn thought we didn't get along great as kids, which is kind of funny. But no, I think as we, again, had the opportunity to work together, we really found really great connection through our professional relationship, because we are quite different. We saw each other's strengths are opposite from each other, and we're really able to leverage that in a way that makes us great partners. So I guess in short, like, yes, we did get along well as kids. We did do a lot of creative things, and our home was full of crafts and a lot of creativity as a whole as a family. But I think that, yeah, we've really learned about each other more, and the successes of our professional relationship more in our adulthood, for sure.
Yeah, fair. How about in regards to like skill sets now that what are the roles that you hold individually in Holland?
Yeah, I think Jocelyn is more of a visionary. She has the long game always in mind, and she's really great at kind of having an idea and helping execute on it. She has a different kind of client portfolio than me as well. We sort of have our own relationships that we manage different accounts. And then my role is more in the day-to-day, certainly more business development. And also, I'm a licensed interior designer, which means that I take on the responsibility of reviewing and stamping drawings for permits. So my work is a little bit closer on some of the projects, and just making sure that the quality assurance is there.
Amazing. How do you manage? It's kind of the same not the same, but it's similar to a family business where you have to manage your relationships both internally or at work and outside of work. Yeah. How do the two of you go about that?
I think we, as much as we can, I think we actually keep them separate. I think that we both recognize that we need to have our identities with our family and our kids in a way that's not always all about our work. I think that's developed with time, and especially because we both do have kids. We see a lot of each other on the weekends and have a very similar social group, but we try to keep the two far enough apart that it doesn't feel like we're working all the time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you started the business back in 2011. That's a long time. What kind of changes have you seen in the industry since then? Obviously, you've gone through several different kind of like periods, if you will.
Yeah. Yes, we have. I like to call it like pre-pandemic, post-pandemic period, which really, being in the business of public and commercial space, particularly office space, COVID really did play a instrumental role in sort of changing the dynamics of our business as it sort of hopefully is now behind us. But yeah, over the last 13 years, I think that it's a little bit, we've seen the economy go up and down and certain things, even political things sometimes tie into what type of work is dominating at certain periods of time. But I also think it's just a professional growth of the business and the brand. We've evolved a lot since we first started. When you're younger and an aspiring entrepreneur, we really did kind of take on whoever was willing to trust in us in our process, and we worked on a lot of different types of work. And then over the years, we've really narrowed in at what I think we are best at and able to really build our expertise in more specific areas. So now we're focusing a lot more on corporate and healthcare spaces, which is something that I think has become a more recognized part of our portfolio, but also genres that we're particularly passionate about.
Mm-hmm. That's so important to be able to say no to the ones that come up and aren't necessarily a good fit, and funnel your energy into the good fits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Regarding designing for those spaces, so you said healthcare and corporate. I know that you're keen on building spaces that work for people. What does that practice look like? How do you go about that?
Yeah, I think one of our strengths at Holland is really that we've always been told we're really good at listening. And so really taking the time on the front end of our process to understand what a business or organization is trying to achieve, and then allowing the space to prioritize not only their programming needs, but what they want for their people and their culture, has allowed us to I think, be a little bit more creative and innovative around the planning and the inspiration that goes into the design and the outcome, really bringing it back to who is the space serving and how are people going to use it, not only on the client side, but sometimes the staffing side or at all user group levels. I like to say that for me, I really want to sort of democratize access to good design. Historically, particularly in corporate design, you'd have the traditional offices along the windows and the big corner offices, etc. But I think that the world has evolved and we're seeing a lot more interest in providing access to natural light and amenities and things that are going to serve the organization as a whole, not just a select group of people within it.
Mm-hmm. So how did you were talking about how COVID kind of changed the landscape, but how did that change the way that you look at interior design for these spaces too? I imagine the way that they were designed previous to COVID is probably not conducive to some of the spaces that you would look at now.
Yeah, I think it builds on sort of what I was saying previously, that people are just generally looking at workplaces differently than they used to. So even though our process has internally evolved over the years, it's actually the people that we're working with that are more open to leaning into different ideas and concepts of what will be most impactful for their people. So largely in office space, we're seeing, again, more access to better real estate provided to the people in general. So again, where you used to have a large corner office, now you might have your staff kitchen or a lounge space or breakout space so that everyone has access to that. Really drawing people back to the office as we are in a hybrid world, thinking about how to make being in the office a choice and conducive to people's everyday needs is really an important factor that CEOs and decision makers are, I think, maybe tuning into for the first time since they've really had to as a result of COVID.
Definitely. Do you find that, or have you ever had clients that maybe, you did a space for them pre-COVID and they've come back to you, they recognize what this thing that we're talking about, which is that things have changed and that they've re-engaged you to redesign the space in this modern, or the way that we look at things now?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of an instance of that, and I would say not so much, but I won't be surprised if we do see it as we come up to the 5-10 year lease renewals, where people have had their spaces complete pre-COVID, and now we're looking at it again in a different context post-COVID. I think we'll actually see a lot of that. And perhaps we are seeing it for sure in new clients that are maybe renewing in their space and renovating. But we may not have worked with them previously, but now they're looking for our insight as to maybe shift some of the adjacencies or reprioritize so that their people can work best in those spaces.
Awesome. I'm fascinated by this idea of being inspired by global elements, things that aren't just in our immediate space, so in Calgary and Canada, et cetera. And I know that you mentioned that you'd worked overseas as well. Mm-hmm. How do you take inspiration from these different areas, these different geographical locations, and bring them to a project or a series of projects or the work that you do in Calgary here?
Yeah, I think certainly the world of design got a lot smaller even in the last 15, 20 years that I've been practicing because of centralized resources with the internet. So I think for a period of time, it was really more about aesthetic and inspiration. People were going to the same places to get inspired. And then we saw that sort of globally trends became, whether you were in Australia or the UK or in Canada, you were seeing a lot of similarities in the approach to design. But now I think where I see the most interesting information is the sort of research and data-based information that's coming from different countries. Again, largely because the type of work we're doing is quite specific to workplace and healthcare. But I think different countries have different problems and different approaches as a result of that. And as we have more and more research and data to support what's working and what isn't, particularly post-COVID, I think that those influencers are going to impact how we approach things here locally in Calgary and in Canada.
Awesome. I love that you mentioned data. I think you could speak to it, but I think it's probably an overlooked element of any sort of creative work where it's like, oh, they don't use data. It's just based on what looks great or whatever the case may be. Yeah. Tell me about how you use data in the work that you do. Yeah,
I think there's sort of different levels of that. I think that there's a lot of data available based on workplace strategy and different research-based groups that are making that data available to different designers and organizations. But then there's also the data collected from each client and project profile to help facilitate planning for their future spaces. So that can be done through a variety of ways. There's lots of actually equipment now that can track, for example, what meeting rooms are getting used and which ones are not, high traffic areas, etc. And then again, there's also just the listening component of it and involving different people from an organization to be part of the design conversation. So we find hosting different workshops or sort of user engagement sessions prior to getting into detailed floor planning allows us to get different voices at the table and learn through their past experiences on how we can apply and improve it in their future experiences.
Awesome. The fact that you do that shows so much about the work that you do, because I feel like a lot of companies just kind of jump into a solution, like prescribing a solution rather than kind of listening. Mm-hmm. What are I know you mentioned workshops and that sort of thing, but what are some specific ways that you ensure that you're actually listening to the client and incorporating their feedback into the work that is to come?
Yeah, I think it is first of all just taking the time to do it properly on the front end. One of the challenges that we have in our industry is everything moves at super speed. Typically, clients come to us and they already know they need to move. They already have a location in mind. And then with that, they already have a timeline of when they have to be occupying the new space. So it can be challenging sometimes to help people prioritize the front end work of getting the information gathering right before we go too fast, as you mentioned, into the solution. So we really take great care in educating our clients that that's an important piece, and also working with other strategic partners earlier on in the process so that hopefully we have the opportunity to talk to these people before they're in perhaps they don't even know that moving's an option, or maybe they want to renovate but rethink what they already have. Getting in front of people at the right time and educating them on the value of that process, I think, is the most impactful way for us to be involved.
You were mentioning an idea earlier, your experience earlier, which was that you were unsure if you were going to go into interior design or architecture. Can you maybe describe what the difference may look like to those who don't know, and then what the relationship looks like between those two in any given project?
Yeah, certainly. We actually collaborate with architects regularly there. Anytime we're working on a new building or outside of what would be a commercial licensed interior designer scope, architects become an important part of the equation. Most of our typical work, for those of you that don't, or for those people that don't have as much knowledge about what licensed interior designers do, most of it comes with inside of a building envelope. So anytime you have an empty box that needs to be filled with new partitioning and new walls and all of the things that would come together to make a space whole is typically done by us. As soon as we cross into building envelope or changing things like exits or certain life safety issues or life safety items, that's when architects become our partners, and we just really have to emphasize to our clients how those relationships go hand in hand and how they're valuable to the project.
That licensed element, is that mandatory for the work that you do? And if not, does it give you a competitive advantage?
No. So interior design is a unprotected title, really. So it's challenging actually in Canada sometimes to help educate people sort of what services we offer and the extent of how we can be involved in their projects. On one end of the interior design spectrum is we refer to it more as interior decorating, where people are more surface level in the application, and it really is about making a space look beautiful. And then on the other side, we're a licensed interior design firm, as I mentioned. So in Alberta, we're governed by the Alberta Association of Architects. And what that means is that we can essentially be liable for a project in a completeness so long as we don't work outside of the scope of practice that's defined by the AAA. So again, everything from the inside out is really within our scope of practice.
Right. Tell me about what makes like an ideal project for you. You know, it comes across your desk and you're like, oh, this is it. What are the elements that create that excitement for the perfect project for Holland?
Yeah, perhaps I'm speaking for myself, but I think it's in alignment with Holland as a brand. But I think that the ideal project is really about the people behind it. It's value alignment of working with people that have similar beliefs and approaches to what they want to gain from the process and the outcome. So whether it's healthcare or corporate or even hospitality, if people really want to understand sort of the why behind their approach, we'll love to be involved and really help harness their ideas into something that's going to be impactful with the end solution.
Understanding that why, is that something that's, you know, unique in process to Holland?
I think it's a differentiator. I think it is. I think a lot of designers probably would say that they agree with that, but I really think that our processes and our approach align with it and actually practice that as a core element of starting a project and carrying it through to a successful outcome.
So alignment of people externally, so clients and that sort of thing, but I imagine the same could be said for internally. So, you know, your staff and the people that you work with and that sort of thing. How do you go about attracting the right talent, maybe the hiring process or attracting, and then also maintaining company culture, and what does that look like to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, attracting talent is a challenge in itself, I would say, probably for most industries, but in design, it is, you know, it's a tough industry. A lot of people kind of pivot or change or burn out of the industry before they really maybe meet even mid or senior level of experience. For us, I think when we're looking for talent, we always ask ourselves, like, are they value aligned? It's less so about maybe their exact profile or project experience, but more so what drives them, what excites them, and really, again, how they want to provide impact to the end user of the spaces they work on. So I think even though it's challenging to find an abundance of applicants and we're looking for new talent, when we find the right person, I think we really our brand and our values really resonate with them, and as a result, I think we have a really incredible team that we work really well together, and ultimately wants to stick around for the long run because they see the opportunities in the work that they're doing and the growth that's available to them at Holland.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that? I suppose for context, there's a lot of organizations that would always take kind of the best portfolio or that sort of thing on the top of the desk rather than kind of dive deeper into who is this person, what do they care about, and how does that align with the company's values. Whereas, you know, their portfolio might be a little bit less sharp, but can get there. Is that kind of a practice that you subscribe to? Is maybe, you know, prioritizing value alignment and who that individual is and ensuring that, you know, they can move up to the perfect portfolio that you're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we're looking to hire, I think to align with that, we I always ask questions to be answered with the application. I think in design, because it is so portfolio based, sometimes that outshines what other people can offer that they may not otherwise have the opportunity to get to an interview phase. So when we ask for applications, of course, portfolio and resume is a part of that, but how people respond to the 5 questions that we ask them to provide answers to often is what provides them with the opportunity to interview. And so much of who we hire is really based upon value alignment and what we see from a personable perspective. Maybe a little bit of quiet confidence and ability to carry themselves in a way that we feel like would be representational of the Holland brand. Portfolios are nice to have in alignment with that, but not always necessarily the hiring factor.
Has that 5 questions approach always been the case, or was that something that you learned kind of along the way?
It's something I learned along the way, I think. Yeah, we probably introduced that in the last 3-ish years, and it's been great. It's been interesting with AI and ChatGPT coming into the picture because I've seen the evolution of how those responses sometimes come in with applications. They're a little bit different than they used to be, but I still think that someone that takes the time and pays attention to those questions is already a step ahead of those that don't.
That's super interesting. So you've had people try and answer these questions via AI. Well, obviously lots.
Well, based on assumption. I just they're starting to just get like a little bit more sophisticated or curated based on, you can just kind of tell it's based on content that's easily retrieved from the internet. And just sometimes even the wording sounds like a little bit similar in how people submit them. So it's just an observation. I'm pro AI, to be honest, but an interesting observation to see how that's impacting even applicants on the front end.
Yeah, that's super interesting to me. I'm curious as to, because I mean, there's many of schools of thought and none are right or wrong, but is that something, when somebody does that, for example, is that something that's showing you that maybe they're resourceful and they can use a new technology? Is that showing you that maybe they're just trying to mass apply to lots of different things, so they're trying to have it, do it quickly? Like, what does that mean to you when you kind of intake that?
Yeah, I think resourceful is probably more likely how I feel about it. I think that as much as it can be used as a tool, obviously it needs to be personalized a little bit. So I think people that can do that most effectively do it the best. But even in my own role, we talk a lot about AI and how it can be applied to design and the design process. And I think that there's so much opportunity for us to use it as a tool, which will speed up some of the more tedious day-to-day tasks and allow us then to be more creative and have more time to do maybe more purposeful or meaningful work because we have the time to do so. So I'm personally, again, pro AI, still learning myself, but I certainly wouldn't say it's a bad thing if, when I observe it with applicants. It's just how it's done is interesting.
Yeah, fair enough. Have you ever had a bad hiring experience?
Yep, I have. Yeah, we have had some people that interviewed great and then didn't perform, essentially. And I think, we learn through those experiences as well. And again, I think that's just reinstated that the value alignment and some of those more or maybe less obvious skills or attributes are the ones that we really need to dial into, not just, again, how well someone interviews and how great the portfolio is. There's an art to hiring.
Definitely. That art that you've learned, and I mean, it's an ever-learning process, but what have you learned that you might be able to share to people who are thinking about, making the 1st or 10th or 100th hire?
I think just looking for authenticity of people that are going to really champion the organization and again, believe in what it stands for. I think we've had the most success with the people that understand why Holland would be a good fit for them, and we see the same opportunities of how they can contribute and be a key member of our team. So we always like to make sure our team knows that we don't have ceilings at Holland, and we want people to feel like they're in it for the long run, and we're always helping them develop into the professionals they want to be by giving them opportunities to get there. So yeah, looking for people that have that mindset and that sort of confidence to contribute, I think has been our best success in hiring.
Where do you get your fulfillment out of the work that you do every day?
I think that answer has evolved for me over the years as well. I love seeing our team succeed. Is definitely, I think, where I'm at in my career now. We have an incredible team, and when I see them recognize their own, great work and being validated for that, I think that's an incredible feeling. But then for me personally, I just love seeing space getting used the way it was intended to. At the end of the project, even a year or two afterwards, going back and revisiting a space and seeing how it's performing and again, offering a certain quality of day-to-day life to people is extremely rewarding and something that keeps me in this industry again and again, because no two projects are the same. And the challenges and the challenges are there, but the reward is equally as fulfilling if you can get through it and again recognize that even though design makes space beautiful, it can offer people so much more than that. And yeah, it's a really exciting career.
Are you able to, I'm sure, but tell me more about, so for example, as we're a video production company, and when we watch movies, we're always picking apart different things, that we're like, oh, that's wrong, that's incorrect, it's weird that they did this, whatever. Is it the same for you in spaces? Obviously ones that you didn't work on, but you walk into and be like, oh, this is a little weird or inefficient or...
Yeah, I think that I try to be like, not hypercritical of other people's work or spaces, but I think definitely when you see something that's working well, I'm more aware of something that I admire or that from observation is functioning very well. I'm sure other designers, depending on how involved they are in different project types, if they're in a space that's similar to something they're working on, they would definitely be more observant of some of those micro details. But yeah, I just try to appreciate space for what it is more than anything, and then take the things that I observe are working well into my own work when I get the opportunity.
This just makes me think about, force fitting potentially. So the idea of, let's say there's an office space and there was a tech company in it, right? And then I don't know, any other industry, whatever, a manufacturing company moves into it, for example. Are you able to tell when the space has been force fit because it hasn't been designed for that company's unique needs?
Yes, I think absolutely. Sometimes it can really work and it can be functional, but I kind of think you don't know what you don't know, in the sense that if someone hasn't led you through the more complete design process to help make the decision-making part of the end result, I think that you don't know what limitations you have by space until you start having those pain points or challenges as you start living within them. So yeah, I certainly don't think that it can serve a group as well if it hasn't been really considered from the onset. And that doesn't mean you have to start from like a blank slate. You don't have to demolish everything within a space to make it usable from a blank canvas perspective. But going through the process of understanding how to work within those limitations in the most impactful way, I think is definitely an exercise worth doing for the benefit of the people that are using the space.
What role does education play? I know we talked a little bit about this earlier, but I imagine just like you, just probably in your workshop process and that sort of thing, there's a lot of education going on with the client saying, hey, this is what to think about, this is how things help. And maybe even beforehand, about, I guess maybe my question might be, do you ever see resistance on the idea that this is an important aspect to building out a space?
Yes, I think more so resistance comes with budget limitations. I think that the most challenging sell is the return of investment on some of the costs associated with making those changes. So I would say we never try to push ideas or concepts on people that don't feel in alignment with their brand and values. But when we advocate for certain ideas or things that might have a little bit of upfront investment, when the budget numbers come in and maybe they're a little bit higher than the group was hoping for, that's really where we start seeing those things getting cut or moved down the priority list. And I mean, that's just part of the business to some degree, but if we can hopefully keep design principles in place, even with some compromises, I think most people are still receptive in trying to make those values apparent in their new spaces.
Have you ever made a design mistake or a mistake with a client?
Yes, absolutely. I think it'd be pretty isolated perspective to say that you don't make mistakes, but I always say mistakes will happen. Construction is a tough industry because mistakes cost money, but we always try to look at it from a customer service perspective, and mistakes happen, but how we respond to that and address them, I think are elements of how we've actually been successful and certainly had repeat clientele, even on projects that maybe had a few bumps along the way, responding to it appropriately and resolving it can usually be done. It's just taking accountability when necessary.
How do you go about marketing?
We have spent more time and energy with our marketing approach in the last year specifically, just as we've again grown and continue to be in growth mode. We, for the first time, hired a PR group to help us with really understanding our audience and being a bit more strategic in our approach. And then internally, just working towards creating content and information that's relevant to the people that we're trying to connect with. So again, in workplace and healthcare specifically, just information sharing and putting up more content that provides insights into how and what is happening in those sides of the industry in design has been an effective part of our marketing strategy.
Do you work on projects that aren't based in Calgary as well, or do they have to be local?
No, we work on projects outside of Alberta. We've worked as far as Alaska, and then sort of all over Canada and a little bit in the States. So we work in lots of different places. With that comes certain partnerships, et cetera, to ensure that we're able to practice within those jurisdictions. But I think it's nice to have the opportunity to work in different cities and places.
Do you have a criteria that kind of helps you determine what makes sense when you're exploring avenues that aren't necessarily, right in the backyard?
Not necessarily, no. I think that usually when we have those opportunities, it's because the client is looking for a certain innovation or quality that we offer, which is obviously exciting. If someone wants to work with us because of those factors, then it usually means that there's a good fit for us and for them And we don't let our geographic location deter that from happening. So we've had pretty good success working in other markets, and it's great also to have the opportunity to learn about their differences and how that can actually make us more well-rounded in our approach and our design aesthetics.
I'm going to go back to the kind of entrepreneur side of things here for a second. So when you start, I'm always curious as to when you start a business, it's because you're either passionate about the solution or you're passionate about the craft. And I'm curious as to your journey with that. So, you started doing the work and then now you have a team to do the work, but how do you manage, ensuring that you're still fulfilled by the things that you do every day? And maybe haven't moved purely into a management role, or how do you maintain that balance of ensuring that, you're excited about showing up to work every day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think part of it is just changing the mindset that celebrating the team's successes is a huge, a huge win for the group as a whole. So seeing our project leads and project designers do amazing work under the Holland umbrella is hugely rewarding. I also changed my mindset around, what design is on a day-to-day basis for me. So even though I'm not designing the spaces as intimately, I'm designing the relationships and designing the culture and structure of how our team operates. And I think that has its own creative path that's also really exciting. So I just try and tune into that, and I love the industry of design and built environments. But more than anything, I like being creative and offering my skills where they're best utilized. And as I've gotten older and I guess more experienced, I see how I can apply that differently.
The education side of things, it's obviously, you mentioned earlier that data is coming out and it's constantly evolving and things move at 1,000 miles a minute. How do you ensure that you're staying on top of things both personally as a company and as a company, and incorporating the new practices, making sure that you're listening to the data, that sort of thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that comes with having the right resources in place. So as a group, we need to have the time and the people available to be really tuning into that information so that it can be shared and dispersed across the organization. So it is a really important piece of design, which is always evolving. And we've really made moves in the last year specifically to build our senior and associate level of staffing so that they can be more integrated in participating in those conversations and the research and the contribution of how that then trickles down to the day-to-day project work of the rest of the team.
What do you think is the consequence of not staying on top of learning or staying on top of things?
Oh, I think it's just easy to become comfortable in what you do and how you do it. But design, you always want to be on the forefront of innovation. So I think the consequence of not doing that is you become complacent, and with complacency becomes redundancy. People just start recognizing that and turning to those that are demonstrating that they're working towards the latest and greatest and understanding the new information that's available to them.
Being a founder is an extremely time-consuming task. You're also, you have a young family. How do you prioritize your time and where it's spent? That's been an evolution as well. As I, started as an entrepreneur, it was, just kind of what I gave all my energy to. And in many ways, I'm grateful that I did that before having a family, because I really, was willing and able to kind of go through the grind of getting to a point of stability in the business growth. But then as I had children, like I think most parents would say, everything changed. Your perspective changes, your time changes, and your values change. So for me, I've found that the best way that I
can feel good about being both professional and a parent is by really putting boundaries around the time of both. So working when I'm working and being available to my team, having really good childcare, so I feel happy about dropping my kids off in the morning has been part of that. And then when I go home, on the flip side, really putting work aside and prioritizing that. The short time that I have with my kids needs to be uninterrupted, and just making sure that's never compromised has, I think, been how I've been successful in doing both.
At any point has putting those boundaries in place been complicated? Maybe a client calls you late at night or something like that, but what are those principles that you refer back to and you're like, no, this is important to me, and so I'm not going to deal with that? I
do think it can be complicated in some instances, but I also believe that like attracts like. So I like to think that the clients and the people that we choose to work with have, again, similar values and respect for time. So I haven't been challenged by that in too many cases. And when I have, I've had to really reflect on, what is it worth? And I think being diligent about not compromising on that time is really important.
We talked a little bit about AI earlier, but I'm curious as to the role of tech in general in your industry, and what are there any cool pieces of tech or techniques or anything like that are coming out that are going to be forefront?
Yeah, I think again AI is just however it's being applied. In our industry specifically, we're seeing faster space planning platforms, things like Mid-Journey or opportunity to create visual imagery that is sort of fully from the imagination in a sense, and then crafted through written prompts is definitely something that's exciting as well. And I actually think that it's going to make for better design because, as I mentioned earlier, for a long time it was sort of a Pinterest world of everyone going to the same place to get inspiration. And now I think we have the tools to communicate quicker, more abstract ideas, which I'm optimistic will continue to be easier to sell because we have the tools to do that. In a time frame that is realistic for project budgets. So that's really where I see the greatest opportunity for AI. But technology changes every day, so I'm sure even in the next 6 months we'll see all sorts of new offerings that will benefit our industry.
Amazing. Is Mid-Journey actually, is it usable? Are you using it in your?
I
remember when it was throwing six fingers and stuff like that like a year ago, right? So
yeah, I think it is usable, certainly, and it's a great tool if used effectively, much like ChatGPT, really, and that it's very usable for certain phases or stages of our design process. Not quite there for sort of the later rendering and more realized finished products, but yeah, I think it's a really great tool, and our team has definitely been dabbling in it, not all the time, but we've had several projects where we've had the opportunity to leverage it as a tool, and it's been really great for what it offered.
Amazing. What does success look like to you?
For me, I think success is really when you start recognizing that your work is purposeful and impactful to others. And maybe that's just dependent on scale. I think, in many ways we've already had that success. But I just think that I always wanted for design and for myself to know that I could make a difference. In what I think is perceived as a very sort of superficial world, again, because a lot of people don't really understand what interior design fully can be. I think yeah, recognizing the value of what I can do on a day-to-day basis to benefit the lives of others is really success. And I feel like I would share that with most of our team has a similar outlook and are already, I think, making waves in the work that we're doing.
Yeah, awesome. That it goes to show, the people that you have here, that we talked plenty about people, but it seems like everybody shares that same value. Do you think that the things that the things that have gotten you to the point where you are today, the success that you've realized so far in your journey, will be the same kind of principles that will get you to, the next phase over the upcoming years?
I think it's a constant growth. I don't think that I'll ever feel like, I've made it. I think that learning and growing and sometimes trial and error, is always going to maybe take you on different paths or journeys. But I definitely think that there's lots that I've learned over the years. But I'm not ignorant to think that I'm not going to be learning every day for the foreseeable future, and just hopefully able to share my experience with others so that in more of a leadership role, I'm able to offer some of my own experiences to those that we hire internally or to others in the industry.
If you were to go back and give yourself a piece of advice that you've learned along the way on day one of starting Holland, what might that be?
Just don't be too hard on yourself. I think it's there's always going to be ups and downs, and I think that is part of what you sign up for as an entrepreneur. But it's being not afraid of failing. It's okay to make mistakes, and ultimately we're our own worst enemies with being hard on ourselves. So I think, if I could go back 13 years and tell myself that, I probably would have, not lost as much sleep or, been stressed about certain situations that, in the end didn't turn out to be as big of a deal as at the time they felt they were.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a learned skill as an entrepreneur, to just kind of roll with the punches and keep on keeping on? Or, are there, I don't know, is it an innate thing in entrepreneurs that's something that we're just kind of born to do? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a quality that most entrepreneurs have, or the ones that stay in, entrepreneurship. I think that it's a little bit of a must-have is being agile and willing to move ahead and press forward with clear direction, but be okay to, if the path goes a little off course, or you need to experiment with different things or take risk that doesn't work out quite as planned. I think, you have to be okay with things going and off course along the way. I think that it's just part of who I am and what I assume most entrepreneurs are as well.
Regarding I think you're 100% right, by the way, but regarding the losing sleep thing, do you think that's, obviously it's important it shows that you care. If you didn't lose sleep over something like it's probably a bad thing. But do you think we get better at that along the way? Just determining, it is what it is, and I can fix that tomorrow, rather than taking it home and dealing with that.
Yeah, I think it's more, I think it's confidence in knowing that you have the tools to respond, and that things are not necessarily a crisis when they feel like it. They may be a problem, but usually there's a way to find an answer. And I would say that most of the people that really we've worked with over the years have been receptive to how we respond. So again, confidence in conflict resolution is something learned with time, perhaps. Still care, obviously, and I still do lose some sleep. But at the end of the day, I can find confidence in knowing that I can find a creative solution that'll address it, and then hopefully, everyone can move on.
Amazing. What's next for both you and Holland?
For me, I am just continued to committing to my role in more of a leadership light. I see our organization growing. We are looking to expand outside of Calgary and move into other cities. So that's sort of in the immediate future. We're actually opening an office in Edmonton in January, which we're excited about. And then with that growth comes more responsibility to the people. So really just continuing to build our people and our talent and also our culture as a group, I think is where we want to continue to focus our time so that we can, again, attract the clientele that we can serve best and make the most impactful built environments for.
Congratulations on the expansion. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Where can we send people to follow along, the next steps of your journey?
Most of our information is on our website, so certainly that would be a great resource if anyone's interested in learning about sort of how we approach things or our processes, or even some of the blog posts that we've published on workplace and healthcare specifically. We're also active on most social media platforms. So in design, I find that those get followed quite a lot. So and LinkedIn, of course, is where I spend some of my time. So
awesome. I know firsthand your website is stunning, so keep that up. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for this conversation today, Jaime. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been actually really nice. Like you said, very comfortable, and appreciate you asking, I think, questions that felt easy to respond to.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.